The most important thing to keep your eye on for Alabama and for everyone else. Alabama must win this game. Nick Saban is the only coach in the last 80 years to win the national championship without winning his division. That dog's not going to hunt this time around.
Let's make it clear why that is. This game is more important for Alabama than it is for LSU.
So glad you asked me that question. Because this game is at home, and Alabama doesn't have a good win, other than Texas A&M, which is not really a good win. So if LSU goes to Alabama, a place that nobody wins, they've lost 3 games in the last 7 years, then now, and if LSU loses, that's still a really quality loss. If Alabama loses at home, forget about it.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a legit way to look at it as we start building up the hype for LSU Alabama, the game of the century.
And to Paul's point, the continuum is the rest of the schedule. Right? Like, after you get one loss, we begin to look at, okay, who do they play after this? Just like when Georgia lost, and I had to talk people off the ledge because they got Florida, they still had Auburn, and they still possibly had the SEC championship, barring they take care of business. That's enough strength to get you right back in the conversation. With Alabama, you lose to LSU foreseeably. You're not going to the SEC championship, and the only other team on your schedule is Auburn.
But we know that they take things into account, though. If Tua is banged up or hampered or clearly affected, will the committee take that into account?
But they would have to.
But who do you boot?
Well,
that's the question.
Well, I mean, so you mean to tell me that if LSU goes into Tuscaloosa and wins by 3, good football game, and Tua's 90%, then LSU goes and wins the SEC championship, that you don't think Bama would get in?
Right.
Well,
I totally agree with that.
And then it comes down to, are they one of the best teams? I think they are.
Yeah.
And you're going to get this tug of war, most deserving, best, which we go through every single year.
I think the answer to that is yes.
I don't see any way where if Tua plays to not full strength, which is what we believe it'll be, and they play in a good competitive football game, LSU beats them in a close game and then goes and wins the SEC championship, I don't see how you can keep.
What happened?
Depending on other teams, I don't see.
All right, yeah, I don't want to go down the barrel, but what happens if Penn State beats Ohio State?
Well, we got 11. Penn State.
One thing you're going to see if that happens, Nick Saban will be sitting here campaigning. Joe Burrow is just playing Moneyball every game. What's so interesting to me, we were sitting at SEC Media Days, and somebody mentioned that Joe Burrow may be top 3, top 4 quarterbacks in the SEC, and got laughed off the set. He was not really highly regarded. He was a serviceable quarterback last year in Marcus. This year, he's been the best quarterback in college football.
Yeah, this is the perfect case of when opportunity meets the whole thing coming together. Joe Brady coming in from New Orleans, Steve Ensminger working that relationship with Joe Brady, letting him be the passing game coordinator, and Joe Burrow being in a system that creates his best self. And what LSU has always had, they've had athletes on the outside. If you find guys that's going to implement the right scheme and a quarterback that can get them the ball, they're going to make plays. And I think that's why everybody's excited. People forget, Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry was at LSU at the same time.
Correct. Yeah.
Like, this is not some team or some school unfamiliar with talented players. It's just now they have a scheme.
They didn't have a coach who knew how to get them.
There you go, Paul. This is a scheme that suits them.
In Saturday's game, there's going to be 7 receivers on the field that'll be top 60 NFL draft
No question.
picks. 4 from Alabama and 3 from LSU. I mean, I think we're forgetting about Tua a little bit here, right? I mean, Joe Burrow's having an outstanding season. But Tua Tagovailoa has had a 2-year stretch that as good as any quarterback we've ever seen in college football, performance-wise, results-wise, statistics-wise. Obviously, the health is in consideration or conversation. But if Tua is 90% plus, this offense should be willing and able to score 35, 40 plus. Now, they'll need to against LSU, but they will roll as well.
Who do you think in the long term can afford the loss more, Alabama or LSU?
I would probably say LSU for a couple reasons. Number one, they're on the road in Tuscaloosa, which is always a tough place to win. That might be a little bit more forgiving if they were to lose. Number one, they got to compete. I mean, they can't go and lay an egg. I mean, they've got to compete. But if they were to lose a close game, and then there's that. I mean, they went to Texas, and I know Texas isn't having a great year, but at the time, that was a very impressive win. And I think the committee looks at who did you play in the non-conference, who are you willing to play in the non-conference, and at the time, Texas was a top 10 team. So I think if either team can afford it, if you're going to sit here and tell me that LSU with this great offense this year, their only loss would be at Alabama against Nick Saban, who had 2 weeks to get ready, and it was a close game, and that's their only loss, I think they would have at least an argument to try to get into that top 4, whereas Alabama doesn't have that marquee non-conference win. At the end of the day, with the committee, they would just have to say if Bama loses at home to LSU, the only logic they could use is their eye test. We just think, despite losing to LSU, they're still one of the best top 4 teams. And at the end of the day, that's what the committee's asked. Put not the most deserving, but the best. That's the only leg that Alabama, the only leg they would have to stand on, in my opinion, if they lose at home to LSU.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports, highlights, and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.